This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And Avoid the Maze is about our journey in life. And as I have shared many times over, I never suspected that I'd be sitting at my computer having a conversation with somebody about their journey. When I was a little girl, I had so many other things that I thought I was going to do in my life, but I am not sorry that I'm here. My guest today is Regina Huber, and we met through podmatch.com. And again, thanks to podmatch.com, I find the best guests. So, Regina, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be Regina today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, Karen. It's really a delight to be here with you today, and I can only say the same. Thank you, Podmatch. I've been on some wonderful shows, and I am sure determined to not disappoint you today, Karen, and your audience, of course, as well. I grew up on a farm in a small village in Germany, and since then I have lived and worked in many countries on several continents, like Spain, Portugal, Argentina, Brazil, California, New York City, Florida. And I've also spent about 8 months on the African continent in several different countries. I started out working at a global consulting firm, and I was with that firm for about 16 years total. And I also owned my businesses, two businesses in Argentina and Brazil. And now, of course, in the United States. So I've had a very, very adventurous life, and a lot of dance has always been in it as well, which is a major component that I wouldn't want to miss, of course. It actually also plays a little bit into my business and how to, and to my coaching approach, which is a very holistic approach, although it might not be obvious at first, right? But I actually think it all began with my insatiable curiosity, Karen. I have lived a life filled with adventures. I took many of what other people would probably call crazy risks. And I have learned that when you take lots of risks, you open up lots of opportunities. Absolutely. But of course, you would agree, right?
Right.
Yeah. But of course, then sometimes you also get results that are undesirable or unexpected. So we try to avoid the maze, but it's not always easy or possible. Exactly. And what we need to remember, though, that there's always a way out somewhere. There's always an exit, because there is a solution for any problem or situation. Right. And if we don't take risks, that at least has been my experience and is my opinion, then we miss out on the opportunities of life. And as you know, what humans regret the most usually at the end of their lives is what they didn't do.
Exactly.
I have a few of those regrets too, a few of those examples, of course. I think everybody does, but they are very few, because I've taken a ton of risks and I lived a ton of adventure as a result. And, it's just been such a full life, what some would call a life well lived, even if it's not always been perfect.
I love how you say that, because so many people, including myself, for the first 50 years of my life, I took a few risks, but not many. Okay. I tried to just keep going down that straight path because it was comfortable. But as much as it was comfortable, I was feeling those things that you're talking about, that at the end of my life, what are the regrets I'm going to have? And yes, I was happily married and I have 2 children, and everything, on the outside looks great. But it was, what was I doing to really fulfill myself? And risk, as you talk about it, doesn't have to be this huge risk where, you just take every penny you have and invest it in something and then maybe lose it.
Right.
How about
I
investing
did too.
ourselves? Yeah.
But no, you don't have to imitate all my risks. Please don't. Don't, because yeah, go ahead.
Well, sometimes those risks are worthwhile because you learn
Yeah.
from it and you say, I'm never going to do that again. Or if I do it again, I'm going to do it differently. And I think that's what we're learning today. And especially women today are learning that, you know what, if we don't try something, we're just going to be in the same position we've always been in. And we're going to think everybody else has it better.
Exactly. And I like to say sometimes we don't make mistakes, we only have experiences. And some of those experiences work out as expected, and others just turn into great opportunities for growth, to learn something new, as you just said. And what's important, though, I think, is, yes, to be intentional and to steer ourselves along our very unique paths, but that, as you just confirmed, Karen, it's not always a perfect path, because otherwise we would already be finished with our lives.
Exactly.
What is there to learn then, right? I like to call it to be the choreographer of our lives, because I love dance. And I sometimes say life is a dance and dance is life. So that's one of my mottos. So I believe uncertainty isn't really bad. It just is perceived as bad by our subconscious. That's why we are fearful or anxious around uncertainty usually, because of course our subconscious always wants to keep us safe. Yes, and that's how it's programmed. But uncertainty also holds tremendous potential. The question is, are we up for exploring this potential? You mentioned comfortable, Karen, but there's always a moment when this so-called comfort zone becomes uncomfortable anyway, because we know that there's something else and we want to break out of it. So I call it sometimes the convenience zone instead of the comfort zone, because there is a certain moment when it's actually no longer comfortable. It's just more convenient to stay in that same routine as always, right? So, yeah.
Well, and as you say that makes a lot of sense, because like I stated, I was right around 50, 51, 52. And my son one day, my youngest, said to me, Mom, why are you so depressed?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he has mental health issues where he gets depressed. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And I asked him, and he said, it's just the way you're moving around. It's just the way your speech pattern has changed. And I said, I'm going to have to think about it. Well, the more I thought about it, the more depressed I actually got, that my poor son is recognizing this in me. But it was at that point, I said, I have some choices I can make. I can either face it head on, I can ignore it and continue to feel whatever this feeling is, or I can reach out and start asking for assistance because I don't know what it is. And that's what I did. That's when I found my first coach, who said, well, let's just talk. Where is it you would like to be?
Amazing.
I never thought about
a similar question. I ask, what is it that you really want? What do I really want? Do we ask ourselves this question often enough? Right? Sometimes we forget about what it is that we really want, because we also grow as we move along in life, and these needs change. And what might have been a great idea 10 years ago is no longer such a great idea, because we are supposed to grow further and to move along on this path, and to just find our new chapter in a way, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And when I moved to New York about 11 years ago now, I was in New York City. I had just had a really painful experience with a business partner in Brazil who was fraudulent, and the situation was extremely painful to me. For a long moment, I would say I
Right.
was devastated, and eventually I had to just find my way out of there, out of this maze, and back into a more self-empowering mindset, because as long as we're in victim mode, we can't really do much with the situation. It's not moving, we are stuck. So there have been a lot of ups and downs in my life, of course, because of the risks, but also because of other circumstances. We all have external circumstances we cannot control, right? It's always about what we do with them, of course. And yeah, so I had to make that tough decision, really, to close my business down back then, and to start over. And I decided that the best idea was really to move. And I figured, okay, my next best destination is New York City. So I just packed up and moved again, as I had done many times before. And when I arrived in New York City, I was standing there and I was thinking, okay, what's next? What am I going to do now with all this eclectic experience as a business owner in Argentina and Brazil, in leadership with, as a previous leader at a global consulting firm where I had worked in several different locations and language zones as well. And I just come back into the English speaking area of the world after speaking Spanish and Portuguese for 7 years without a network in New York, everything rebuilding from scratch, or rather building something new from scratch, right. I should say. And yeah, it wasn't easy. It was a clarity finding process at the same time as I was building this network. And I also had to, in a way, rebuild my self-esteem and my confidence, because, of course, although it wasn't my fault that this person was fraudulent, we usually beat ourselves up a lot in those situations, because, of course, we should have known better, right? But we couldn't know better, because in hindsight, we always know more. And once we get to a point where we truly don't just forgive the other person, but ourselves, which is the hardest part, that's when we can move forward, in a faster way again, I believe, right?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah. And so that's when I really had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with all this eclectic experience, with my multicultural and multilingual experience in several different countries? How am I going to put all of this together into a meaningful package, into something, a project, a new business that could make a difference, and that would also be aligned with my own passions, right? Something that would be fun, that would be fulfilling, and that I would want to do for the next few years.
Sure. And I know there are people who are listening and they're going, well, Regina, you had the means to move around. You had the background. What happens to the person who doesn't have that self-confidence? And that's where I was. And that's why I reached out. First, I reached out to a therapist. And after a month of therapy, I said, this isn't what I'm looking for. I don't need to talk about when I was pushed off my bike at 6 years old and I'm having traumatic memories about it. That's not where I needed to be. I needed to start from where I am today to move forward. And somebody said to me, well, why don't you find a coach, whether it be a business coach, a personal coach, find somebody who can help you dig down deep about who you want to be and how you can get there. And within the first session, it was wonderful. It was like, it's my choice. It has nothing to do with my mother or my brother or the neighborhood kid. Okay. Yeah, those things happen. That's history. And I may need to pull that history up in the future, but that's not where I am today. And coaching is what got me to say, hey, I know I'm smart. Guess what? Now I'm using my brain. And
Exactly.
it's amazing what we can do when we have the right support.
Absolutely. And you had that breakthrough so fast.
Yes.
Right? You know, because it's about this self-empowering mindset and about realizing that our past does not have to define us anymore. We're now grown-ups. As children, we are so malleable because we don't have filters as young kids, so we just take it all in and we're like this sponge. But now we have had experiences, we have seen things in the world, we have learned from our own experiences, from observing others, from a bunch of things. So we are in a place where we have a different level of judgment, different level of discernment, and we are supposed to use it and to decide for ourselves. Hence, you know, what I said earlier, become the choreographer of your own life, or whatever you want to call it, the director of your life.
Right, exactly.
Steer your own ship, right? The captain, whatever your word is, I don't mind. Pick your favorite word.
So
and
when you call your practice holistic, what is the difference between being a holistic coach and, I mean, I don't call myself that, and maybe that's what I do when I'm coaching, but let's get an explanation so our listeners understand.
Yes. First of all, I also wanted to go quickly back to your previous question about, just quickly about the confidence, because
Sure.
when I arrived in New York City, my self-esteem was below zero at that time. It was literally at a point where I knew something had to happen, but I was still cleaning up the mess. I was going back and forth to Brazil. My energy was split between the two locations. It was not an easy time. So I had to find some ways myself to go into networking situations, and speak about a business that I was still even just creating in my mind at the time, that I hadn't gained enough clarity myself. But that's how we gain clarity too, by speaking to other people, by pitching, by experimenting, right? And it wasn't always easy, but I came up with some tools and techniques that I used before I went into those situations. And I later compiled them in my book, Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine. They're little techniques that we can use to mentally, physically, or energetically prepare for challenging situations, and specifically speaking situations, because we're speaking right now, but there's so many other situations where it requires us to speak, to show up powerfully, to show up authentically, to connect with people. And these are the little tricks that helped me back then as well. And some are just about connecting with my inner power energetically. Some others are visualizations, whatever works for everybody. Right. So we use those crutches while we're still getting to the next level. And the beauty of these exercises is also that they actually enhance our perceived presence, so we become more visible too when we use them. But yeah, so back to your current question now. We're hopping around a little bit. The holistic approach. Yes, the holistic approach to me means several different things. So first of all, I did study holistic modalities, healing modalities in the past, and they also helped me in the process, not just by the sessions that I received, that my generous friends who studied similar modalities with me offered me at the time, but also by me applying everything that I had learned in those modalities and methodologies about mindset, about energy, about the subconscious, about all these different concepts and all this knowledge that I'm bringing, of course, into my coaching practice, even though sometimes a little bit more indirectly. And that's one part of it. And then, of course, also holistic in a sense of life being a holistic phenomenon. We sometimes artificially compartmentalize life into work, professional and personal, but
Right.
it's not really all separate. It's all connected. It's one life. And that's what I also mean with it, because a lot of people come to me, a lot of clients come to me because they may want to work on a promotion, on a salary increase, on a raise, on their leadership skills, whatever it is for everybody. But later on, they actually share some things that are more personal because they also play into it. We cannot just say, oh, this is only professional, and this is who I am, at work, and this is who I am when I go home. Yes, we adapt to certain situations, we adapt our communication style and all of that, but we're still the same person. We want to be that authentic self. And what does authenticity mean to me? It means showing up as the best version of who we are, ideally.
I think that is a wonderful statement, because my best version today may be different than my best version tomorrow. And once I started to understand that, okay, I don't have to be the exact same person, even all day long. And in the beginning, I kept using the word, I'm an imposter, because I felt that, well, I'm doing this today. This is my best version, but tomorrow, this is who I am. And it took me time to realize, no, that's me all encompassed. But it's like you said, it's the influences of where you are at the time that can change your best version. And I will say that there have been times when I first started going through coaching that I'd walk into a meeting, and even though I had these tools that I had practiced up until walking to the meeting, those old feelings came over me. And I remember one meeting in particular, probably the first 10 minutes, I sat there, didn't say a word, nodded my head. If I was called upon, I said, I'll get back to you or something like that. But all of a sudden there was this breakthrough. What are you doing? This isn't where you want to be. And I started thinking about it. And all of a sudden I became this vibrant person in the meeting. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was like, okay, something sparked me. And now I can be who I want to be.
This is beautiful. And you know what? That's funny. I had this TV show in the past that was called What's Your Spark? Something sparked you. It's probably a piece of your unique brilliance that showed up, and it just had you become that person that you deep down already were. The best.
I was suppressing it for whatever reason, I keep trying to go back to that day. What was it when I walked in that made me shut down? And I don't see it, but that's okay. I know that I can get out of that mode. One of the things that I did a year ago, I took a positive intelligence course. And that has certainly helped me, because I realized that if I'm sitting here in a fog, I'm not being mindful of what's going on. Now, maybe that's what I want to be. Maybe I just want to close out the world. And if I can accept that and say, that's where I want to be, I'm okay with that. But if I'm sitting here going, that's not where I want to be, now I have tools in my toolbox that can get me out of that mode. And I think that's what I used back then, even though I had not taken positive intelligence.
Yes, and I'm familiar with positive intelligence too. I also did some of it in the past, definitely. But also, I think what you realize is that you had a choice, It doesn't really matter so much to know exactly what it was. It could be something subconscious that you might never, figure out. That's fine. The important thing is that, that you acknowledged it and you did something with it. You didn't fall back into the habitual. Sometimes we confuse authentic with habitual, the default.
Okay.
person, or the default mode we are in. And that's also not exactly what we want in authenticity. We become habitual, we fall back into patterns we might not want to see in ourselves when we are not self-aware enough. And that's why self-awareness is so important, and why I always say self-leadership is the most essential leadership trait. The foundation for self-leadership is self-awareness.
Interesting.
Because it helps us to not just be better leaders of ourselves, but also better leaders of others. Because when we understand ourselves better, we understand the complexity of humanness, and that's when we understand others better as well.
So what made you write a book?
What made me write a book? Well, first of all, the question that you asked me earlier, what did you do in those situations when you didn't feel confident, when you were still rebuilding that confidence from below zero, as I say sometimes. And these are the little tips and tricks that helped me so much, and I know that they've helped a lot of people since. So I did take the time and sit down and write the book. And some tools that I share in there are, for example, a way to connect with our inner power, because we all have this inner power energy inside of us. We just are not always connected with it. And when we're not connected with it, then it's like wanting to watch TV without plugging in the power cord, or to whatever we do that requires plugging in a power cord still in these times, right? And we can practice this plugging in our inner power cord with simple exercises. This is just one example. Also, one tool that would have helped you in that situation probably, Karen, is another technique that I describe in the book, is how to anchor and trigger a feeling of confidence within just a matter of a second. We cannot share everything on this in this conversation, but there are many, many ways of doing that, and different people prefer different tools. So that's why I mixed it up a little bit, so that there's something for everybody. Some people prefer the more visualizations, more the mental tools, and others more the energetic ones, or the ones that are more body focused. I like them all, but the energy one I do really most regularly, just because of my personal preference.
Sure.
So my suggestion is not to do all the exercises in the book. It's about picking what speaks to you and doing those consistently.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because so many of us pick up a self-help book. Mm-hmm. We read it and we say, oh, this is what I have to do. And I know, going back to positive intelligence, when I was taking the course, I wasn't doing everything that they said to do. I was listening. I understood the concepts, but one of the things is that they suggest that you rub your thumb and your first finger together. And that's to give you a sensation and just basically take you out of where you don't want to be. And they talk about that you'll feel the grooves in your fingers. Well, I don't. My fingers are very slippery and soft. I don't feel the grooves. So when I was starting out in the class, it was like, I like what I'm learning, but this is not for me. Mm-hmm. But I understand the concept of it. So what can I do for me that will take me out of whatever it is that I don't want to be in, or prepare me for something else? And so I started coming up with those. And then, there were other exercises. They said, you should set your alarm and do this so many times a day. And it was like, that may be good for other people. If I do that, I will be so OCD by the end of the day that I will have gained nothing. And so after the course, we stayed together, and we're still in a weekly group. And I will tell you, I thought I was the only one going through the course that way. And it was like, no, we're all finding what works for us. You take the basic concepts, and then you make it work for you. And if it works for you, that's the positivity.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. We are all different. We all have different needs. We all have different desires. We have different preferences, styles, and we need to cater to those in how we think we can best grow. Again, it's discernment. And it's also actually a piece of self-awareness, what you just described.
Right. So how do your clients find you? I know there's, especially through Podmatch, almost everyone on this program is a coach of some sort. And, sometimes I think, God, why did I start coaching if all these other people are coaching? And I realize because there's always somebody out there who wants somebody to help guide them. And it's not always easy to get those clients. And sometimes, we find clients that we just don't connect with. So how do people find you, and how do they know that you are the good fit for them?
Yes, of course, I have my website, transformyourperformance.com. I have my LinkedIn profile where I share a lot of value. Okay. And so that's how they already get to know me and what I'm all about, who I am. I also have a YouTube channel where I share videos, not always as many as I want to share because we all have 24 hours a day.
Right.
But I do the same also on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I'm probably the most active of all social media. I have a LinkedIn Career Growth Strategies newsletter that is not only for people who have corporate careers, who are employees. It has a lot of valuable nuggets for, I believe, everybody. I've written over 70 articles for that since last year. It's a weekly newsletter. There's a lot of free value online that I put out. I put out these beautiful podcast interviews where people get to meet me in a way as well. In the past, I did more in-person speaking, which I love. And I want to do more of again as well. I mostly did those talks at financial services firms in New York City because, there are so many of them, so many banks, but also some other firms like professional services, law firms, and so on. And then I'm doing virtual sessions as well. I just did one for a big financial services firm, again, a virtual session, which was extremely well received. And it's also actually on my website. It's a great session for even big groups. And that's how I also then meet individuals, although, the speaking is, in most cases, it is paid with some exceptions, but in those cases, I always meet people who then want to potentially sign up for a strategy session, and then we get to know each other even better and figure out whether it is a good fit, whether we click, and whether I can also really help them with their specific needs, because that's what it's about. Right. And if I cannot help them, or if they need a different budget or whatever, then we part, and we've still had a great conversation. And I always definitely also give them some value in that session. And I believe as coaches, everybody is so different. Yes, there are so many coaches. We all are different. We have our different backgrounds. I have a very multicultural background. I easily and organically attract very diverse clients, I would say. And yes, as you said, it's not an easy task to find the right client fit always. So that's why we we do all this extra work. We bring all this free value to people, not just because we want to do it. I certainly do. I love to inspire, but also to figure out who are our ideal clients, and so that they can figure out who they want to work with.
Exactly. Yes. And what I love, and I've been doing, so I got my certification 2 years ago, and it wasn't until April of this year that I finally said, you know what, I'm going to use my certification. And everybody that knew that I had taken it said, well, isn't it about time? And I said, you know, I thought I was doing some coaching through my podcast. And I said, but yeah, I guess it is. However, I have found it so enlightening to be able to tell a prospective client, I know somebody who can help you more than I can. Because when I hear certain things, it's like, I don't have that experience. And not that I have to have all the experiences my clients have, but if it is that far out of my comfort zone, I will give them a list of individuals who I have researched who can help them in those areas. And usually they will come back to me, and say, I'm so glad you did that. What can I do for you? And my answer is, take what you've learned and be your best you. Because that's all we want in life, is to be our best.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, exactly, because it's not fun to work with clients that you cannot help, and plus it never works out well.
Exactly.
You want to have great testimonials, you want to have success stories. It's not just better for your business, it's also just much nicer.
Exactly.
You want to have
Exactly.
fun with your clients. I mean, I'm currently working with one client who has made such amazing progress, and like in the first 3 sessions that I myself like sometimes sit here with an open mouth and say, whoa, this is so amazing to hear. And that's the beauty of it. When you see your clients progress, when you see their successes, when I see, and it's so different for everybody. Of course, I've had clients who have actually negotiated $50,000 pay bumps, or sometimes 30,000 or 20,000, but 50,000 has happened, right? That's beautiful. But for other people, it's something else. And we all want to be recognized more. We want to feel more fulfilled. We have, one thing that I've found is everybody wants greater freedom of sorts. So I always try to give every single one of my clients a piece of freedom, and they might not even notice that at the time, but they notice it later, or they enjoy it in that way, right? Even they might call it something different. But if you all of a sudden are able to negotiate better, especially for yourself, isn't that greater freedom?
It is. It's exactly what we all really want, rather than to feel that, we're being pushed down all the time.
Yeah.
I know when I left corporate America, I didn't leave willingly, but it just turned out that I just had to leave the job. And at first I was blaming them for the fact that I left. And it wasn't until about 6 months later that it was like, I'm sort of glad they pushed me out the door, because even though I loved what I was doing, the culture was killing me, and they wanted me to keep changing what I was doing. And it would be like, but I'm successful. Why do you want me to change? I may not be successful. And then the answer was, well, if you're not successful, there's the door. And I thought, you know what, before that happens, I have to walk out knowing that I've been the best at what I'm doing. And you're right, the freedom that I felt, and especially when I came home and I said to my husband and my son, I can't work there anymore. And my husband looked at me and he goes, okay. And I thought, I'm the breadwinner right now. what do you mean, okay? And he looked at me and he said, if you're going to have that smile on your face, it's okay with me. So
Wow.
to
Yeah,
all of you out there, it's, yes, we all have to work, earn money to put food on our table and to have a roof over our head. But sometimes it's okay to make those adjustments so that we really are doing the best that we can do.
absolutely. Absolutely. I have also worked with clients who were playing with the idea of leaving their jobs for like a few months, and then we had already stopped working, and then they came back and said, you know what, I was laid off and I'm now ready for my next adventure. I'm actually so relieved right now. I just want to work with you again to prepare for that.
I love that.
But you can't, it's not my task. It's to tell them what to do. They need to figure it out themselves. They can find out through guidance for sure, but they will always make their own decisions.
Exactly.
And
How
while one of them specifically comes to mind, while she had made amazing progress in how she felt about her work, and how she was viewed and seen, and her visibility went up, and all the things she wanted through the work we did together, but it was just not the right place for her anymore. And sometimes when we don't step up and make that decision, the universe steps in.
Yes,
and makes it
absolutely.
for us.
Yes, it does. Well, Regina, I want to thank you for joining us today. In the show notes, we will have all your personal information. So there's no reason why our listeners can't find you. And, get Regina's book. Look at the tools that she's providing out there, and maybe you'll use them, maybe you won't, or maybe one of these days all of a sudden you'll be using them and go, where did I learn that? And then you'll look on your bookshelf and you'll see her book. And I really do appreciate you. You've been a delight, and have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. I'm saying the same. I hope our audience got some good nuggets and feel inspired. And if they have any questions, if you have any questions, you're listening, you would like to reach out and know more, or just ask me anything at all, then write me an email through my website.
We love it. Well, have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
And you do the same.